If you want to find the most overlooked, yet profoundly pivotal figure in the entire Bible, it's not who you think. It is not a prophet. It is not a king. It is not even a patriarch. It's a servant. His name is Eliezer, and his story, it rewrites everything you thought you knew about God's plan and your place in it. For Abraham, Eliezer wasn't just an employee. He was more than a right-hand man. He was the administrator, the steward, the very extension of Abraham's own heart. Think about it. Abraham was immensely wealthy. Flocks, gold, silver, servants, everything was under Eliezer's silent, yet absolutely essential supervision. This isn't just about managing assets. This is about managing a John legacy. This is about managing a sad promise. And when Abraham, the father of nations, thought he might never have a child, who did he consider making his heir? Eliezer. This reveals an unparalleled level of trust. A man who could easily betray his master, sees everything, and yet, he chose unwavering loyalty. This alone screams volumes about Eliezer's character. He wasn't driven by selfish ambition. He was driven by something far greater, a profound sense of mission. Abraham saw in him more than a subordinate. He saw a man who understood his master's heart, a man who could be sent in his master's name, acting with the very same spirit and intention. Eliezer was Abraham's walking, breathing extension. So when the most delicate, the most critical moment arrived, the moment to find a wife for Isaac, the son of promise, Abraham didn't turn to a relative, a close friend, or even a prophet. He called Eliezer. This singular act says everything. Abraham knew. He knew he couldn't choose just any woman for Isaac. Isaac was the son of the promise. His wife would directly influence the entire lineage, the very line from which the Messiah would one day emerge. This mission was sacred. It was foundational. But not just any servant. A man who carried within himself the very same faith he had observed in Abraham. A man who watched, a man who learned, a man who understood the God of his master. Eliezer might never have heard the direct voice of God. He might never have seen a burning bush or received a direct angelic visitation. But his entire life was a living reflection of what happens when someone walks so intimately with a person who walks with God. The sheer confidence Abraham placed in him was the seed of a mission that would fundamentally change destinies. Eliezer accepted the staggering weight of this, calling with the reverence of someone who knew he was stepping into something infinitely bigger than himself. This mission wasn't just about logistics, it was about destiny. He carried not just camels and gifts. He carried in his hands the very future of a promise that had been generations in the making. Abraham's faith. A faith that had endured foreign lands, infertility, wars, and shaky alliances with kings, now needed to be sealed. It needed a marriage that guaranteed continuity. And it could not be with just any woman. The choice had to be perfectly aligned with heaven. So, ask yourself, are you available for God's unseen assignments? Do you possess the kind of character that inspires such profound trust, not just from men, but from heaven itself? What mission is God asking you to steward, even if it feels bigger than you? Because your availability might be the very key to unlocking a destiny far beyond your own understanding. This isn't just an ancient custom, it's a raw, visceral pact that challenges everything you thought you knew about commitment. Abraham was old. Sarah, his beloved wife, had passed away. Isaac was still in mourning. A father's heart ached to ensure his son would not be led astray by the women of Canaan, who lived under strange customs and worshipped false gods. So, Abraham calls Eliezer aside, in private, and gives him crystal, clear instructions. Go back to my country, to my relatives, and get a wife there for my son Isaac. But then, a critical command, a spiritual boundary line. Do not take my son back there with you. The promised land could not be abandoned. not even for love, not even for destiny. The spiritual and cultural landscape of that era was complex, wasn't it? Marriage alliances were so much more than romantic decisions. They were strategic pacts between families, between territories, even between beliefs. A wrong choice could drag an entire generation away from God. Abraham knew this, and Eliezer, his trusted servant, knew it too. But here's a powerful detail often missed. Eliezer himself wasn't Hebrew by blood. He came from outside, and yet, he was chosen for this mission. This profoundly reveals how God can use whoever is available fought. Not necessarily whoever has the right surname or the perfect background. Abraham then asks Eliezer to take an oath, a profound, ancient gesture. Placing his hand under Abraham's thigh. This wasn't just a cultural formality. It was a deep, symbolic alliance. It involved not only a solemn word, but a connection to lineage, to life, to the very source of Abraham's promise. It was as if Abraham was saying, "You are touching the place where God's promise began with me. Now, you carry forward what God started here." Eliezer accepts. He doesn't hesitate. This man, who had served silently for decades, now bowed, not just before his master, but before the immense spiritual weight of carrying the continuity of the promise. But wait, before he fully commits, Eliezer, in a display of incredible wisdom and responsibility, raises a serious question. What if the woman does not want to come with me? This isn't a sign of doubt. This is intelligence. This is a servant taking absolute ownership of the mission. He's practical. He's looking at all the angles. And Abraham's response, it seals Eliezer's heart with an unshakable peace. Abraham responds with unwavering certainty. The Lord, the God of heaven, will send his angel before you. And then, a release. If she is unwilling to come, you will be released from this oath of mine. This wasn't an order based solely on human logic. It was a declaration of supernatural trust. It was a guarantee from heaven. And upon hearing this, Eliezer commits completely. The oath is made. There is no turning back. From that moment, the servant no longer acts on his own. He becomes Abraham himself in motion. This oath wasn't just a pact between two men. It was the living reflection of the partnership between God and Abraham, now extended to Eliezer. It was as if he was wrapped in an invisible cloak, carrying not only gifts but promises. There are no reports of Eliezer carrying swords or soldiers. He departs armed only with faith, camels, jewels, and a mission worth more than any earthly treasure. Deep in his chest, an unshakable conviction. Heaven was already preparing the way, even before he took his first step. So, what promises has God made to Sod? Are you willing to step out, even when the only guarantee you have is an invisible one? Because some promises are sealed not with paper, but with profound trust and a willingness to commit to the unseen. Imagine embarking on the most critical mission of your life with no GPS, no clear description of your target, just raw, unyielding faith. That is exactly where Eliezer found himself. The way ahead was pure mystery. He didn't know where he would find the right woman. How he would be received, much less what he would say upon arrival. Even so, he departed, not with anxious, hurried steps, but with a quiet, profound certainty. Like someone walking on an invisible road, meticulously drawn by faith. The caravan itself was prepared with meticulous care. 10 camels were loaded with all kinds of valuable gifts, gold, silver, fine clothes. This wasn't just a show of wealth, it was a profound gesture of honor. Eliezer knew he was not going in the name of an old man, but in the name of a don promise fought. Each earring, each bracelet, each piece of linen fabric, every single item was a tangible piece of the deep respect Abraham had for this sacred mission. The distance was staggering, from Canaan to Mesopotamia. There were vast deserts, unseen risks, and profound silence. And in that silence, Eliezer walked with God. The Bible doesn't report specific conversations during the journey, perhaps because there, in the solitude of the wilderness, the servant was being refined. He was being shaped into an even finer instrument for something far greater than himself. This mission demanded more than just physical preparation. It demanded profound spiritual sensitivity. He didn't carry a detailed manual. There was no physical description of the woman he was looking for. Just one guiding principle. She had to be from Abraham's kindred. Nothing more. No visible sign. And even so, he walked. Because that's the essence of faith, isn't it? Following without a clear map, guided only by an unwavering trust in the God who spoke first. The nights descended with biting cold. The days brought scorching, relentless heat, but no discomfort, no obstacle, seemed enough to make him even consider turning back. There was a commitment made, deeply etched in his soul, and he carried it like unyielding armor. Every single step was an act of worship. Every advance deeper into that vast desert was a silent, powerful declaration that he believed in what he could not yet see. After days of relentless travel, he finally arrived at the city of Nahor, the land of Abraham's family. But still, there was no certainty of anything. The decisive moment was rapidly approaching. The servant stood at a crucial precipice. There was no turning back, no room for improvisation. Either God would lead, or everything, every single step, would be in vain. So, what discomforts are letting define your journey? Are you willing to walk when God only gives you the next step, not the whole map? Because true faith often thrives not in clarity, but in the trust that carries you through the mystery. This is where human effort meets divine intervention. This is where a simple prayer orchestrates a miracle beyond anything you can imagine. It was at that precise moment, with the sun beginning to set on the horizon, casting long fading shadows, and the camels kneeling by the well, that Eliezer did what only the truly great do before the unknown. He prayed. The moment was solemn. The camels, tired and dusty, seemed to mimic the servant, who, in silence, also bowed his head. There was no grand temple, no elaborate altar, no uplifting music, only the sky, beginning to turn a vibrant orange, and Eliezer's soul, laid bare before God. The mission had reached its most critical point. It was time for direct divine intervention, and he knew it, so he prayed. But not with complicated words. His prayer was profoundly simple. It was direct. It was deeply, viscerally sincere. He asked the Lord to clearly show him who the chosen young woman was. He asked for a specific sign. Let it be that when I ask for water, she will not only offer it to me, but also offer it to my camels. This might seem like a small, almost trivial gesture, but in that culture, in that specific context, giving water to 10 thirsty camels was no easy task. It required effort. It demanded genuine hospitality. It showed profound generosity. Eliezer wasn't seeking beauty. He wasn't looking for wealth. He was asking for a definitive sign of Vantarakter character. This prayer, in its simplicity, reveals so much about his heart. He wasn't trying to manipulate God's will. He wasn't demanding. He wasn't conditioning. He simply presented a request with profound humility and left in the hands of the Lord the absolute freedom to act. He knew that if God did not lead that encounter, everything else would just be a desperate human attempt. And then, the most extraordinary thing happens. The Bible tells us that even before he finished praying, Rebekah appeared. This was not coincidence. This was precise, divine providence. The answer came with a staggering precision that only heaven can offer. She not only offered water to Eliezer, but she saitan to give it to the camels. Without even knowing it, she was fulfilling every single detail of what had just been placed before God. That well became the silent stage for a profound miracle. There were no thunders, no dramatic visions, no visible angels descended. But there was an answer. Eliezer was amazed. He watched in stunned silence while every single gesture of the girl confirmed what he had presented in prayer. God had spoken, but not with an audible voice. He answered with attitudes, with details, with a divine choreography of impossible coincidences. And there, still before the well, Eliezer began to realize that the mission wasn't just about finding a wife. It was about discovering how heaven moves when faith is expressed in tangible, active practice. Eliezer's faith had just burst from the invisible into the visible. Right before his eyes, God was answering with a precision that only the heavens can orchestrate. Rebecca wasn't just the girl who appeared at the well. She was the living confirmation that the prayer had been heard and answered, even before it was fully concluded. Every single one of her gestures drew the exact portrait of what he had asked for. She was gentle. She was agile. She was generous. She didn't hesitate to serve. While filling the jar for Eliezer and then for the thirsty camels, she showed through her actions everything that no word could ever affirm. There was no arrogance, no coldness, no calculated motives. There was pure, unadulterated willingness. And this touched the servant's heart profoundly, as he observed everything in quiet awe, like someone seeing the final piece of a complex puzzle fit perfectly into place. Eliezer began to understand. It was not he. It was in control. It was God. So, when was the last time you prayed with such radical specificity and then waited taut for God's precise answer? What character traits are you looking for or embodying in your own journey? Because God still answers, often in the quiet, precise details of life. What if God's yes came not with a dramatic shout, but with a silent, undeniable confirmation? What if he spoke through a simple act of profound kindness? Eliezer, having just witnessed a miracle unfold before his very eyes, didn't waste a moment. As soon as he finished observing, he took out a gold nose ring and 2 gold bracelets, presenting them to Rebecca. This wasn't just a random act. It was a sign of honor. But more than that, it was an act of profound discernment. The spirit within him already testified, this was the chosen one. Yet, even with that inner confirmation, he sought external verification. He asked her, "Whose daughter are you?" And once again, heaven confirmed with breathtaking precision. Rebecca was the granddaughter of Nahor, Abraham's very own brother. From the same lineage, from the same sacred promise, there was absolutely no room for doubt. Everything was fitting together with divine perfection. It was as if time, geography, and history were being bent and shaped by the very hands of God at that exact moment. The young girl, full of excitement, ran home to tell her family everything. And the servant remained there by the well, utterly amazed. The well that had been the stage for his desperate prayer now became the sacred place of its powerful fulfillment. What's truly impressive is that Eliezer didn't celebrate with wild euphoria. His immediate, profound response was bond worship. The servant who had walked for miles, who had trusted without a map, who had prayed with raw simplicity. Now, he bowed to the ground in silent, heartfelt gratitude. He didn't seek glory for himself. He sought only obedience, and everything was happening exactly as heaven had designed. This wasn't just a young woman offering water. She was a key character in God's vast, redemptive plan, and Eliezer, the quiet servant, stood at the very center of it all. Not as a protagonist, but as a living bridge, a vital, connecting point between the promise and its unfolding fulfillment. The bridge had been formed. Eliezer stood in the middle of it, caught between what was promised and what was now beginning to be fulfilled. His first reaction wasn't to run and celebrate. It wasn't to immediately plan the next steps. He stopped, he bent low to the ground, and he worshipped. In that strange foreign land, beside the well, with the camels still exhausted from the long journey, The servant bowed before the God who had orchestrated everything with such breathtaking perfection. His words were not long, but they were overflowing with meaning. He recognized that the Lord had not withdrawn his kindness and truth from Abraham. Eliezer knew that the staggering success of that mission did not come from his own cleverness. It didn't come from mere luck. It was pure grace. It was unmerited favor. It was the absolute faithfulness of a God who not only promises but actively pursues, sought that fulfillment until the very end. This moment of deep gratitude marks a powerful turning point. Until then, Eliezer was the obedient servant, diligently following orders. Now, he reveals himself as someone who deeply, intimately understands how the God he is serving truly is. He isn't just executing commands, he is spiritually involved in every fiber of the mission. He feels the immense weight of history being written, quite literally, with his hands. And he responds in the only appropriate way, with worship. So, how does Satusate respond when God unmistakably answers prayer? Do you take the credit, or do you fall to your knees in profound worship, acknowledging the true architect of your breakthrough? Some of the greatest impacts in history weren't made by the spotlight, grabbing protagonists, but by the quiet, faithful few who built the bridges for God's most profound promises. Rebecca, without fully comprehending the monumental divine choreography unfolding around her, ran home. Her brother Laban, upon seeing the lavish gifts Eliezer had given her, immediately rushed out to meet the visitor. There was hospitality, there was welcoming warmth. But above all, there was a profound urgency in Eliezer's heart. When they arrived at the house, food was offered. It was the custom, but Eliezer refused. Before he would even touch the bread, before he would accept any comfort, he did not to tell the reason for his coming. The profound gratitude that had blossomed at the well now transformed into a powerful, undeniable testimony. The sequence of events told by Eliezer isn't just a recounting of facts. It is a living, breathing testimony. Every single detail he narrates, from Abraham's initial, unshakable order to his specific prayer at the well, to the precise sign, and finally, to its incredible fulfillment. Everything served as irrefutable proof that this encounter was divinely orchestrated. And once again, the servant utterly disappears as the main character. He doesn't highlight his own role. He exalts the Lord. He praises God's unwavering faithfulness. He presents the facts with profound humility and reverence. Eliezer's gratitude didn't stay locked within his heart. It erupted into a powerful, compelling narrative, and that narrative, that testimony, opened the way for the greater purpose to be welcomed. The servant worshipped, yes, but he also declared, because when heaven acts, whoever witnessed it, whoever was part of it, cannot, must, not taught, remain silent. Eliezer's narrative, born of deep gratitude, meticulously prepared the environment for something far greater. When he finished speaking, the silence in the house of Bethuel and Laban was not empty. It was reverent. The servant's words weren't just informative, they were anointed. It was as if each detail fit precisely into God's grand will, as if heaven had led not only his steps, but also his very speeches. Laban and Bethuel listened to everything with rapt attention, and they recognized without a hint of resistance that this was not a human work. They declared, "This comes from the Lord. We can say nothing to you, good or bad." There was no attempt at negotiation, no request for more time to think. The confirmation was too crystal clear to be ignored. What could have been a long, drawn-out family discussion, full of arguments and bargains, was resolved with a single powerful sentence. If God spoke, then that is what must be done. Eliezer had earned their profound respect, not only because of the lavish gifts he brought, but far more for the way he presented everything. He didn't manipulate the situation, nor did he try to force a decision. He simply reported, with unwavering sincerity and humility, what the Lord had done. And that, in itself, was enough to touch their hearts. The immediate, unquestioning response of the family was a relief. But Eliezer didn't allow himself to relax completely. He knew there was still one decisive step remaining: Rebekah's departure. Even with everything ready, the human heart could hesitate. The next day, when he asked the young girl to leave with him, the family understandably tried to delay. They asked for 10 more days, something perfectly understandable. After all, they were handing over their daughter, their sister, to someone who had just arrived. But the urgency of obedience burned firm in the servant's heart. He insisted, not with human pressure, but with a profound spiritual awareness. And then, in a moment of true agency, they gave voice to Rebekah herself. She responded firmly, unequivocally, "I will go." The decision came from the mouth of the chosen one, not pushed, not forced. It was the yes of someone who, even without understanding every detail, felt deeply within her soul that there was a greater purpose ahead. The dialogue between Eliezer and Rebekah's family wasn't a negotiation. It was a profound confirmation. Each answer he received was another divine stamp of approval on the mission. And now, with everything finally ready, the servant could look at the way back, knowing with absolute certainty that the miracle was already walking by his side. Are you willing to be the unseen bridge, connecting God's promises to their fulfillment, even if it means no spotlight for you? Is your yes as firm, as unwavering, as Rebekah's when God calls you into the unknown? After fulfilling the greatest mission of his life, he simply vanishes. What does it truly mean to serve God faithfully and then disappear from the story? The miracle, the very answer to prayer, now walked beside Eliezer, and the desert, which was once a place of daunting uncertainty, now became the triumphant way back. Only this time, he was not alone. The chosen girl, the one God pointed out without room for error, now followed with him towards the land of promise. Rebekah mounted her camel, not only as a bride to be, but as a living, breathing sign that God's ancient plan was in active, powerful motion. The caravan set off, bringing with it more than just jewels or lavish gifts. It carried the profound fulfillment of a prayer. It carried the vital continuity of a sacred covenant. The steady steps of the camels on the dry desert floor marked the rhythmic cadence of a story that refused to stop. Eliezer, now lighter of heart, led the group with the deep serenity of someone who had truly seen God act in every single, intricate detail. There are no detailed records of conversations between Eliezer and Rebekah during this long journey. But this silence says a profound amount. Eliezer had a triumphant story to carry in his heart, a mission accomplished with honor, with divine precision. Rebekah had a future to carry in her soul, the vast expectation of a brand new life. She was leaving behind her home, her beloved family, her entire land, everything, all for a faith that was still being revealed to her. It was like Abraham at the very beginning of his journey, leaving without knowing exactly where he was going, trusting only in the caller. As the group advanced, Isaac was also in motion. He had gone out to the field to meditate. It was not a pre-planned meeting. Yet, the moment was perfectly aligned, just as the servant had prayed with such specificity by the well. Now Abraham's son reflected in silence, perhaps also seeking direction from heaven. And then, Rebekah's eyes spotted someone in the distance. She immediately got off her camel, in a profound gesture of reverence and respect, and asked Eliezer, "Who is that man coming to meet us in the field?" Upon learning that it was Isaac, she covered herself with a veil. This gesture was far more than tradition. It was a clear sign of honor, of surrender, of deep respect for the profound new role she was about to assume. Eliezer, with a full, overflowing heart, recounted everything, every single detail. He left nothing out. Isaac listened intently, and upon receiving Rebekah, he took her into his mother Sarah's tent. And there, what began as a mission became a covenant. The servant's profound faith now transformed into family. The mission had come to an end, but its fruits would continue for generations. And then Eliezer, Abraham's faithful, pivotal servant, never appears again in the scriptures. After fulfilling his momentous purpose, he simply disappears from the narrative. There are no farewells, no grand honors, no visible rewards recorded. He simply vanishes, just like so many truly faithful servants of God, who fulfill their profound role and then quietly leave the stage. But what he left behind was infinitely more than just a story. It was a monumental legacy. Rebekah entered Sarah's tent. Isaac was deeply comforted. The divine promise moved powerfully forward, and all of this began with the quiet willingness of one servant to trust in the God of his master. Eliezer was not a heroic leader. He was not a prominent prophet. He was not a high priest. He was just an ordinary man with an extraordinarily available heart. He didn't seek the spotlight. What he did was simply align himself completely with what God had already determined. Eliezer's silence after the mission was fulfilled speaks volumes. He didn't boast. He didn't demand recognition. He didn't build an altar with his name etched upon it. He just trusted. He obeyed. And then he disappeared. And perhaps that is precisely what makes his story so profoundly remarkable, because in a world desperately thirsty for visibility, for recognition, Eliezer reminds us that some of the greatest, most pivotal deeds happen quietly, behind the scenes, unseen by the masses. His enduring legacy lives not only in the sacred marriage between Isaac and Rebekah, but in the timeless model of the servant that he became. He is remembered as the one who sought specific direction from heaven before acting, who trusted in divine providence while walking through the unknown, and who immediately worshipped as soon as he recognized the undeniable hand of God. He was not only effective, he was profoundly faithful. He not only obeyed, he actively participated in the sweeping history of redemption itself. Centuries later, Jesus himself would declare that the greatest in the kingdom are the servants. And Eliezer, even without ever hearing these words with his physical ears, already lived this truth with his very life. He is living proof that God does not primarily look for the most prepared, but for the most available, that the true greatness of a mission does not depend on the grand title of the one who carries it, but on the unwavering obedience with which it is conducted. While the name of Abraham echoes throughout the history of faith, and Isaac generates the promised lineage, Eliezer remains a faithful, vital, and profoundly silent link, a man who passed between the lines of the sacred text, but whose footprints still deeply mark the ground of unshakable faithfulness. So what legacy are Banto building? Not for public acclaim, but in the quiet, profound faithfulness of your daily walk. Are you content to be a silent, powerful link in God's grand, unfolding story?